As the nation keenly awaits the SONA address this evening, SABC News reporter Lulama Matia joins us live from Cape Town. A very good afternoon, Lulama. What is it that's happening where you are and what can we expect?
Welcome back to Parliament here at the City Hall, because this area has been declared the National Parliament until the Minister of Finance, Enoch Godongwana, delivers the budget vote, the budget speech, and then the precinct will move back to where it is normally at. But for now, I am joined by Nkosata Nenziwe. She is an Imbongi who is going to introduce the president before he delivers his SONA this evening. Welcome to the SABC.
Thank you so much, Sisi. Ngingumthanzelo hlabu samila invuthanele bulala ngaphandle kwesikhali imamba lehlatanele ngimabona bulawe lo shiktela ngetnyawa nengijahembili ngoba kukuthi emuva ingana ngibuyele emuva ngisitoti bunu ngingiloqosha ngemhobholo ngibuye ngekumoyitela nelithando ngisikhala sekwaze emaveni ngiliqabhola emhlaba weAfrika ngiwasempumalanga ngingiphumalanga sikothe endzaweni yasenkomazi ngitalwa ngilamasango ngilamabuya ngumkhahlameti ngilandleka lwela lona lelo lathi nkonjane ngoba phaphetulu ngoDotmandini Komasi buka umhlabathi ubuka isikhumba sami siyakutshela ukuthi ngingumsinsi wekumila eningizimu Afrika ngiwasenzaweni yasenkomazi ngaphansi kwa-executive mayor PP ngaphansi kwebukhosi baboshongwe bomndimanze bobhambolunye tingabatimvili tifute khabonyoko bomageza ngelibisa amandahleli batala abantwana batala timamotfo maye uyadzela umfetlenza kashongwe ngoba uyawutala abantwana labahle buhle bubuta kuyinkosi yami luke bhuta wesibili emayibabe yindaba nje kamabaso buso bungumpompo nono mathamo lwavila ngempompo emkhatsini kwemalangeni mteteleni mandimanze
usani showing the SABC viewers what she's gonna do this evening at the age of 24 years. How did it all started?
Ngasho ukuthi kimi i-poetry akusilo nje likhona kuphela pheceleti i-talent, but kimi i-poetry ifana nesiphiwo lesivela kumdali ngoba angeke ngisho ukuthi ngiphi i-age la ngicale kuyo, kepha nginayo i-age la ngicale kuphakama khona. Ngithi nembewu nayihlanyeliwe kuba nesikhathi la ibesivumbuka khona. Ngibonge kakhulu umnyaka wa 2017 la ngarecognize khona i-local municipality yethu lekuyinkomazi local municipality ngema in-school programs ngoba ngilapho la ngacala khona kuvumbuka kakhulu. Ngaya ngangena kubomisi Ndoni ngawina from Miss Ndoni sengiloku ngiyaperforma nje ngiyambonga kakhulu uNkulunkulu ngalo muzi.
This should be a big day for you.
Yes, it is. It is a big day for me. I've never been to Cape Town before. I've never been in Parliament. Today is going to be a great experience for me, and it's going to have a great exposure to the nation.
What would you tell aspiring Imbongi who wants to follow in your footsteps?
Akukhole ngakusho mntwana babe. Yinye nje involo ngayena linza sikhathi sakho ungabi nje ku competition nalomnye umuntu. Khumbula mina njengami ngingumuntu lokuthanza ko ngesonweni ngimuntu lomthanza kuNkulunkulu ngikholelwa ekutheni ukuthi when the time is right God will make it happen njengoba ashilo even like wena njenga Gideon hamba ngalamandla lonawo ungathuke futhi nangabe abantu bazama ukudiscourage abathiyekela lo lokwendako. Khumbula ingwe idla ngemabala ayo ungakabi nemabala lokusho ukuthi angeke udle. Qhubeka usebende ngemandla utikhandle konke lokuthanza kukwenda kwendisisi.
Tell us how you were selected to come and perform for the president this evening.
Excellencies, it was a long processing. Ayibenga kanjalo akusinto leyivele yahamba kaso yashona eTulu. Ngaqala nje ngaperforma ngikhumbula kahle ngaqala ku local municipalities na ku city of Mbombela bayangirecognize local yangirecognize aqala kwangena iprovincial yangirecognize ngaperforma ku Women's Day celebration abo MEC nabo bajabula. Emva kwaloko ke ngihamba ngayoperformela president wethu Go 112th birthday ANC shows bafike bathandzeka ngoba nema options life for ama poets ngaba nenhlanhla ke. That is why ngithi ungumusa waNkulunkulu kule for ama poets lebeka selected. I was the one who was chosen ukuthi atobongelela mengameli wethu.
Thank you very much for joining the SABC. That was Ngosata Nenziwe and Imbongi, who is going to perform this evening when the president enters the City Hall to deliver the State of the Nation address. She is telling other young aspirant Imbongis to wait for their time because dreams do come true. After that, we are going to talk serious business now. I am joined by an economic strategist, Kim Alberman. Welcome to the SABC, ma'am.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here today. It's a bit hard to follow something so beautiful and affirming with economics, but I'm going to give it a try.
Indeed. The president, it's his last State of the Nation address for this administration. What do you think the economics points that he must talk to this evening?
Well, I think he's under a lot of pressure to increase spending on things like infrastructure, but then he's also got to look after the fact that so many people in South Africa are unemployed, and so there's a big push for that, for a basic income grant. I think there's also NHI, which is going to be seriously on the table coming into elections, and so he's going to be under pressure to make more promises going into an election with less money. And that means that when the Treasury sits to try and finance all those promises, it may have to increase debt. And I think that that's the fine line he needs to walk.
That was going to be my next question. With all these promises that he's going to do, or commitments, are they practical? Where is that money going to come from? South Africans are already under stress, under pressure. They don't have disposable income.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about it. You know, if you go back to sort of 1994, if you think of your own personal life, maybe you came into the economy. You started out your career. You possibly took out a loan for a house, and you had your whole future before you. And now you're in your 40s, and you're supporting many members of your family, which I think is akin to the social grant. You're paying that takes up around 70% of our income as South Africa, and then the other 20% goes to paying off the debt that you've accumulated over all this time. And you've got around 7% of your income that you can use to fund your family and to fund your infrastructure and the running of your own business. So if you relate it to your own life, you can see then you've got a tough decision. Are you going to increase the amount of money that you need to pay for the social wage, because that's going to be pressure? 20% of your income is going to debt. Do you increase that? Because now you can't go to the usual lenders. The lenders you're going to are the lenders that you didn't really want to go to in the beginning. They're charging you 10% now, whereas before they're charging 5%. So you're in a position where your credit rating has gone down substantially. You're paying more for debt, and you've got to decide whether you want to increase that debt bill or you want to try and reduce that debt bill and use that 20% of your income rather to increase the productivity of the country.
Is it fair for some of the political parties that are saying that nothing new that is going to say? I was listening to some SABC radio stations yesterday. Some callers were saying there's not even a need for this event of this ceremony because people have no money. And as you are saying, we are already under pressure. We don't have disposable income, yet he's going to talk to the economy. How is it possible? What can be done?
Well, I think as a politician, you're probably going to be you're going to be calling on finding money somewhere, and you, especially in an election year, you can't be seen to be austere, even if that's the most prudent thing to do when it comes to your finances. And I also wonder, in an election, this particular election year, how much choice he has. Because you're fighting, in a sense, your fight is so going to be determined by how much you can continue your social development programs. And so I think he has very little choice, actually, but to make more promises.
And then there's the issue of ESCOM.
There's the issue of ESCOM, which is, to me, it's ESCOM is unfortunately, while a lot of hope, there was a lot of hope that this year we would be able to reduce load shedding, private sector would come in and take up a lot of that slack. I think what we're seeing is that the power stations that were already built, Medupi and Kusile, they're still not operating properly. So we're still going to be experiencing load shedding because those power stations are operating often at 50% capacity. So, if the private sector does come in, which they're doing slowly, then unfortunately we're still losing power because the existing power stations aren't operating. And so ESCOM's own report says we're probably going to be faced with load shedding for the next 10 years, which means regulation needs to start focusing on, I think we've heard this before from the energy experts. I'm not an energy expert, but it seems that the transmission sector is really where we now need to focus our energy, because if we can't transport the energy on a grid that's stable, the private sector producing more energy is not going to help load shedding.
And what would you say is the impact of that on the economy as an economic strategist? The impact of load shedding on the economy and ultimately in the creation of jobs?
It's huge. For me, what it means is it's difficult to model it, actually. But the way that I look at it is you've capped growth at 1%. When you start to see South Africa growing above 1%, then load shedding kicks in and we have to pull back. And the upside of that is clearly there's pent up supply and demand forces there, and we want to grow more than 1%. We can grow more than 1%, but as soon as we hit that 1%, then our infrastructure can't capacitate any kind of further growth. So I think that the urgency here is we need to supply infrastructure before there is no momentum, to move, before all of the industry actually starts shutting down further, and the ability to grow at more than 1% isn't there, even if we do start producing more electricity. So I think that's the sort of the longer term risk here.
Okay. Yes, you say you're not an energy expert, but what do you think of these independent power producers? Because do you think they will have an impact if they are connected to the grid? Because there's been talks, but we don't see the real action.
Yes, there has been talks. I think the action is political. So there are constraints to private sector becoming bigger in the energy sector. I think that it is perceived by politicians to be a risk to allow the private sector to become a majority player in the energy complex, and that is something that we need leadership on.
Last year, the president, when he on his talk about economy, do you think that he has kept his promises that he has made over the years when he was delivering the state of the nation when it comes to the economic front?
No, he hasn't managed to keep many of his promises, and some of those are policy promises. For example, NHI, which he's now sitting with on his desk, and it may be that that's an easy promise for him now to keep, to sign it in, and then he can show that at least some of his promises have been kept. But definitely when it comes to, I think, logistics, and when it comes to all of our ports and the rail and electricity, where there's just so much vested interest and corruption, and it's such a politically charged task for him, I think he has very little options actually when it comes to fulfilling those promises, because they're out of his hands to a large extent.
Okay. Thanks for that a lot for your time. And with that, let's go back to the studio.
Thanks very much for that, Lulama, reporting there in Cape Town.